it's like he repeats this phrase and it's the hell of myself. And I just think about that so often, the hell of myself. Like, if that doesn't describe it. Hi, I'm Ariel. You're watching She Wants the Diction, and today I wanted to talk to you guys about some books that I read recently. So I don't really know what I want to call this video. I don't know if I'm gonna try to label it a recent reads or just a ramble or like what, but I kind of just wanted to talk to you guys about a bunch of stuff that I've kind of had on my mind recently, like within the past couple of weeks. And the couple of the books that I want to talk about, the first one is In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, and it is subtitled Close Encounters with Addiction. And I did finish this. It's quite long. It's very long-winded. I gave it 3.5 stars, which a lot of that was for the fact that I felt it was very long-winded. But overall, the information in here is really, really good. Like, I would rate the information like 4 to 5 stars, just because I feel like it had personal impacts and applications to me. And also just the approach of this doctor is super compassionate and is something that we need more of in the world, because he talks very honestly about his own struggles with the type of addiction that he calls behavioral addiction, which he doesn't put himself in the same class as like a hardcore drug addict, because addiction hasn't disrupted his life to that point. But he does talk about his struggles controlling these impulses and urges that he has. Like, his specific addiction is that he likes buying classical music CDs. And so he will talk a lot about how he's actually lied and hidden this habit. And, you know, he's tried to stop and cut back and it's never worked. So most people wouldn't consider that really a problem. Like, he's a very successful, you know, physician. Like, he writes books, he keeps up with his family life, everything like that. But the thing about it is he does feel addicted to it because he feels like not able to stop. And it's more of a behavior. It's not, he's addicted physically to a chemical, like a chemical dependence or an addiction like that, but he does use this as a point of entry to be empathetic towards the different patients that he has. And I'm actually going to put the book down because I realize I end up holding the book if I just keep holding it and talking. So he uses this as a jumping off point to be very empathetic to his patients, which I really, really liked. Like, the beginning of the book is literally just him talking about these different people. Like, he works in Canada, and I believe he was talking about like, I believe it was downtown Toronto, downtown somewhere. But anyway, so he works in like basically a very destitute area where a lot of the addicts and homeless people sort of congregate. And so he works in like a clinic down there and like a hotel and a shelter that they have for some of these people. And so he gives us a lot of their life stories and just like encounters that he's had with them. Basically, he spends the entire first part of the book trying to humanize these types of people. And what I thought was so interesting about that, I mean, I was kind of rolling my eyes because I feel like this might just be unique to me, but I do feel like I already know that, you know, homeless people, addicts, they are still people, and a lot of them are really, really good people. And the way that I know this is by, you know, I was homeless. I've been homeless in the past in my life, and I had an ex who I basically kind of lost to addiction. Like, not lost as in like he's dead or he's not alive, but as a person, like the person that I knew when I first met him became a different person over time due to his dependence on drugs. And it's a really complicated thing because I also believe that drugs should be legal and access to drugs and drugs existing isn't the problem. The abuse of them, essentially what he tries to talk about in this book is that the abuse of them is not due to a personal failing with these people. A lot of these people, there's a very, very high correlation between abuse and bad experiences and like traumas that these people have gone through that in most cases is the reason that they had to turn to something else. After he kind of humanizes these people, which I do feel like is necessary, like in our society. Like, most people do look down on people who are drug addicts and people who are, you know, have lost their homes and can't maintain like what we would think of as normal in society. And so I do think that was very necessary. But then he moves on to explaining the science and how addiction is essentially a hijacking of normal human systems, the opioid system, endorphins, dopamine, all these different neurotransmitters. It is a corruption of the natural human system, the bonding system that would attach us to our caregivers or parents or, you know, whoever is caring for the child. When that is disrupted, it creates all of these problems in the brain and in the body. And this leads to, you know, he sees a lot of untreated ADHD. He sees a lot of PTSD. He sees a lot of conditions in these people that are literally caused by a corruption of that system. And when you think about it, it really does make sense. Like, let's say, for example, you are lacking dopamine in your body. Any little thing that gives you a surge of that, if you can't produce enough in your own body and your own mind, you are going to seek that out when you don't have it from the sources that you should have had it from. He kind of talks about how there's a wounding when this attachment is broken or was never formed, like it was never formed. And he literally talks about the only difference between him and these people is like, it's a very slight difference. Like if his life had been in any way worse, he probably would be in their same shoes. And that's what I feel like people aren't understanding about homelessness. You know, a lot of people in America are one paycheck away from being on the street, living paycheck to paycheck. And I think about this a lot. Like I believe the beginning of my life, I had everything that I needed to come out healthy, to be a healthy child. I had a healthy attachment, at least to my dad. And over time losing that, as he became more and more obscure due to his mental illness, I do believe those systems were corrupted. And so personally, it was just personally applicable to me because it helped me understand, where does this come from? Like, why do I have such an addictive, obsessive thing? And I know there are going to be some people rolling their eyes at this. Like, of course, you know, everything goes back to your childhood, everything goes back to parenting. But this doctor is essentially saying in this book, like, yeah, it does. And this is costing us a lot of money. It's costing us a lot of strain on the healthcare system when these are things that they need a more compassionate approach. We need to not blame these people for the situations that they find themselves in, because it literally changes your brain. It affects your brain. It is an invisible, you can't see it, but it is an invisible change and a lot of like essentially brain damage. And it can be repaired if these people, if they agree to get completely sober. A lot of the treatments and stuff won't work until they are deciding to get sober, and they don't have a lot of motivation to do that when we're pointing fingers, blaming them for something that essentially they had no control over. And they are trying to get things that make them feel good any way they know how, you know? And on a lot of times that ends up being drugs is what they have access to. So the overuse of those, you know, and the abuse of those can be linked directly to this giant problem that we don't want to talk about as a society. We don't want to deal with it. And we just want to say those people are bad and they chose that, and they made the option. They woke up one day and said, I want to be a drug addict, you know, like, when that's not at all the way it works. And I definitely, as much as I was rolling my eyes at the beginning of him talking about his addiction to like the classical CDs, I kind of do recognize a lot of that in myself. Like, I'm not going to say that I was ever an alcoholic, but a few years ago, I did struggle a lot more with alcohol as far as like overusing it and abusing it. And I don't think I was like alcoholic, like I could function without it. But, you know, when I would drink, I would overdo it, or I would use it to, you know, help bolster my confidence, and it would get me in a lot of bad situations that, you know, I didn't want to be in. And so I have struggled with substances before. Like, I feel like the only thing that really allowed me to quit alcohol was when I started microdosing and I stopped feeling the need for it so much. Just like that compulsion almost to drink. Like, it was just a confluence of factors that occurred at the same time that I think allowed me to I recognized that I was going down somewhere that I should have been going down. Like, and I felt very bad about relying on alcohol, because I remember I would wake up after being hungover so many times, and I would go for a run hungover, you know, like still a little bit buzzed, honestly, like to try to like work it off. Like, I knew this wasn't a long-term solution, but it was like, this is all I can do right now. You know what I mean? And so I think a lot of things just happened at once. Like, I also met Adam at this time, and it felt like he like really got me and saw me, and he was like the partner that I had been waiting for. Like, I think in the past I had settled for a lot of things and just gone along with things because that was what was there, or, you know, I was lonely or whatever. And so I was in a period where I was like being single and, you know, working on myself, and I met him, and I was like, I knew this was the person like that I had always wanted, that was going to like be my equal in so many ways and like actually see me. And so, yeah, a bunch of things just kind of happened at once. And the microdosing really helped with my crying spells that I had as well. And eventually I stopped feeling the need to drink and desire to drink. And now it's like, I very rarely drink. I drink like one drink, you know, maybe to have a good time. And it's always like with other people, like socially, you know, so I maybe drink a few times a year, if that. And I don't feel the need to get carried away or like drunk now. That's good. But I do feel like the like obsessiveness and the addictiveness kind of just transfers over to something else. Like, every time you try to quit something, I feel like something else comes to replace it. And I kind of compare it to like, you know, the stereotype is like when people quit smoking, they just transition to like coffee or something else that they can be like really obsessed with. Like, they don't really quit. They do quit the one thing, but they just kind of replace it with something else. And that's kind of how I always feel. Like, I've been trying to cut back on my caffeine intake for like, I don't know, like maybe a year at this point, because like I over rely on it to like focus on tasks that I feel are really boring, and like working every day, which is why I drink so much of it. Like, I drink so much caffeine, you guys. Like, you guys have no idea. Like, and I worry about my heart just because I have a lot of like health anxiety. So it's like I keep doing it even though I know like this is bad for my heart. Like, you know, I should stop doing this. But it's like it's almost like I replaced the alcohol with like the caffeine, which is more socially acceptable, right? Like people don't see that as a problem because it's something that's accepted in society. I mean, people don't even always see alcohol as a problem unless you're going way overboard. But it's like, you know, in yourself what your usage of it is. And it's so frustrating to be like, I can't control this. Like I'm trying to cut back, I'm trying to do this, but like it feels like I need it in the moment to get through the moment. Like I deserve it in the moment to get through the moment. Because the moment is unpleasant, or I need to focus, or I'm very tired, or whatever. And so point being, I think what he tries to express in this book is that a lot of addicts do blame themselves, and the provider also blaming them and heaping all this other stuff on people who are already struggling so badly, that's not good, you know? Like that just makes them, they have no incentive to get better. If that's what we're going to do to them. And so it was really just an incredible book. And I think this guy's work in general is absolutely incredible. Like I love the approach that he has to it, that not everything is a disorder that needs to be medicated or, you know, because I feel like in this society, the first thing we turn to is drugs. Like I know when I went into the doctors to address my anxiety, the first thing they hit me with, you know, was a prescription. And I don't think that automatically drugs are going to be the solution. And I'm really glad that, you know, when I did try them, I didn't try them for very long. Like I had a bad experience starting them anyways, because they made me like super like nauseous and sick and stuff. And at the time I couldn't afford to not be able to work. And so I basically quit them. And I'm glad now I did that, because I feel like the drugs would only have been masking all this repressed trauma and unresolved stuff I wasn't dealing with. Like what I really needed was therapy, but that wasn't offered to me. It was just drugs were thrown, and I tried it for 1 second and didn't like it. You know, I understand these things are not instantaneous, but his approach to it is not everything needs to be medicated, because the origins need to be addressed, not just medicating the symptoms and automatically, you know, pathologizing everything. Like a lot of these people, they just need to be heard and listened to and helped. Not to say medication can never be helpful, but it's just assuming that's automatically the answer to everything immediately without further investigating what the issues are. Like our medical system just needs so much more of a compassionate approach. And I just so definitely agree with him. And even in his other book that I started, which is about ADHD, he has the same exact approach to it. As in, it's not necessarily something that automatically needs to be medicated, although medication can be helpful. He's like, you know, there are ways you can work on it. You can address these root causes. You can learn where it originates. Like, and I really, really like that, because I feel like I'm somebody who gravitates towards, you know, neuroplasticity is a thing. The brain can heal and grow and change. And I just don't want to go to, you know, some pill that I have to like has side effects or become reliant on, or anything like that, if I don't have to, if I can find alternative ways to address it. And I feel like I have done that, because the medical system has failed me, and it's failed so many other people so badly. Like even when you do everything right, even when you go in for help, the help that they give you is just, it's not good. And over the past few days, I wanted to try this out. This is the Olly Goodbye Stress Gummies. So it's like a supplement that has GABA and L-theanine, I don't know. And also lemon balm. But anyway, so I already knew the L-theanine was really good for me, because that's like a compound that's in green tea. And I drink a shitload of green tea just because I notice I feel so much better. Like I feel alert and calm at the same time, which I absolutely love. So I drink a lot of green tea. And so I already knew this was something that was going to work for me. But the GABA, whatever the hell this shit is, I believe it's something, a neurotransmitter or something that affects dopamine. But whatever this is, I've realized I'm very impulsive, and I feel like this allowed me to control a lot more of my impulses. Like I just felt like I slowed down when I took these, if that makes sense. Almost like a sedation, you know, like my thoughts weren't racing as much. Like, and from listening to this book on ADHD, I basically found out that it's not normal for your brain to be going 24/7. Like apparently that's like not normal, which confuses me. And then also like it's not normal to be bored all the time, which I've complained so many times about being bored on this channel. Like I was shocked. Like I was shooketh. I was like, oh my God. Like I'm not saying I have ADHD, but I'm definitely just saying I have a lot of the traits that I feel like are associated with it. And at this point, I don't even know what I have, because so many of these like disorders, and I'm not saying that to discredit them, I'm just saying I don't think your brain working differently is automatically a disorder or is necessarily bad or wrong. That's why I prefer to call it neurodiversity. So many of the like disorders that I suspect that I have overlapping symptomology, and a lot of them originate in lack of development in the prefrontal cortex. At this point, I don't really know what I have and should probably go and get evaluated, but like, I cannot recommend these enough. I'm not fucking sponsored. We all know I'm not sponsored on this channel, but I just wanted to show you guys these because this is wild. I will say taking 2, they recommend taking 2 per day as necessary, but also say only take them occasionally. I don't know what that means. I kind of found that the 2 in the morning, like, I feel like it like made me kind of lethargic and like slowed me down, but I noticed that taking 1 a day is kind of working better for me. So yeah, I just felt like I was able to like control an impulse. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, I really want a Mountain Dew right now. Like, I was able to be like, well, but I don't really need a Mountain Dew right now. Like, I feel fine, you know, I feel better. Whereas normally I would be like, you know, resisting that impulse all day. I was able to like control it better, I feel like. So then I start thinking, well, maybe my bias towards medication is actually wrong. Like, maybe this literally is just some neurotransmitter or like chemical deficiency, and this could all be fixed with a simple pill, and me having all these fears of it changing me and changing my personality and doing this and that is wrong. And then I was also like, maybe I'm a hypocrite because I believe in microdosing, although I feel like microdosing is different because it's a natural compound that occurs naturally. And yeah, I was just like, well, maybe I'm a huge hypocrite for being like anti-medication, but it's also like, in order to get medication, you have to go in and get diagnosed and get labeled and have people tear you apart. And I've just been so disrespected and hurt by the medical system, the racism, the not being listened to. I'm sure it's also like sexism, or so many women have the experience of not being listened to at the doctors, and I definitely felt that. And so it's just like, I just have so many bad vibes from going into the doctors that I'm like, it is my last resort. And so I just wanted to try these, and then coinciding with me reading about the whole ADHD thing, I was like, oh my God. And especially ADHD and autism and all these things I know are very often missed in women, underdiagnosed in women. And so that was just kind of a realization for me. Like, I don't feel like I need to go and get a diagnosis as long as I can learn ways to manage it and things that kind of help, because I don't necessarily think that being the way I am is wrong. I think it's literally only society that dictates what the norms are. Society makes it so that you can only fit in or go along with it being one way, but I just don't feel like that's the only way to live. Like, I do need to conform to that enough to like survive, but I don't want to totally like try to like eradicate who I am or like change who I am. But I do like being able to have better control over like my impulses and such like that, because it's always been a big point of like self-hatred for me, I feel like, is the fact that I can never like eradicate that personality. Like, I'm always obsessive and addictive. Like, even with reading, I feel like is a coping mechanism, which like is honestly healthy, again, compared to like being a heroin addict. But I mean, it's still a compulsive thing that I do constantly to like, before I feel like it was trying to, you know, escape what was happening or to distract myself from ever thinking about it, because PTSD and avoidance, to have constant stimulation, which I feel like is apparently an ADHD thing, is to constantly, you know, need things to entertain you. Like, you feel like you're just gonna like die. Like, being bored is almost like the worst thing in the world to me. Point being, if you are interested in trauma at all, if you are interested in psychology at all, you should make an effort to read this. This helps you get a picture of, you know, why is there this gaping hole that I can't really fill with anything, and I just have to keep transitioning it on to different things. Like, why is that? Where does that come from? And he really goes into depth, like explaining that. And he's willing to examine himself, to kind of throw himself under the bus to some extent, and even talk about the ways that he at times has felt angry with his patients because they won't do what he wants them to. He's felt as though he's better than them or elevated above them in a way. And he's very honest in his explorations of himself and his interactions with his patients. And you can just tell this is somebody who really sees his patients as people. Like, if you could go and see a doctor, like, he is the doctor that you would want to see. I do think this was really amazing. And towards the end, he makes the argument for why we need to have these places for people to get clean needles and methadone and stuff like that. Like, we need to basically do like harm reduction stuff, which the US is very opposed to, which just puts these people who are already at risk in even more danger when we could be helping them and giving them kind of an inroads to, you know, if you want to get sober, we have a place for you to get sober. If you want to get help, we have a place for you to get help, and have human interaction and conversation, which is something that they are lacking. They are lacking, you know, these human attachments, their systems have been hijacked and miswired. You know, there's nothing wrong with them. They are still people. They just have these problems, and they dealt and coped with it in the only way that they could. And so I maybe feel more compassion for that than most people, just because I feel like I've dealt with it to a minor extent. And also, you know, I had a significant other who I kind of watched lose himself to this. So the other book that I kind of wanted to talk about that relates to this is Inside Out. This is by Joseph Osmundson, and he's Joe. If you listen to the podcast Food for Thought, he is one of the members on there, and I feel like Joe is a very slow burn. Like, when I first started off listening to the podcast, like, there are other people that have like funnier or louder personalities, but Joe is really the slow burn member. And honestly, I like him the best because his commentary is always so insightful. He's always quoting random authors. He's very sad, so he always has like a depressing like thing to say. Sad bitch vibes. And yeah, he's well read, he's well spoken, and yeah, I just feel like if we ever met, we would like totally vibe. But so anyways, when I found out that he had books, I was like, let me get that, you know, like I need to read this immediately. And so in this one, it's like little vignettes. And what he is doing is kind of recounting this particular sort of toxic relationship that he had, and like the breakup and how it affected him and everything. And it is beautifully written. I rated it 4 stars, of course. Like, I knew just from hearing him speak on the podcast that it was going to be a good book, but I just knew he could write just like listening to him speak. And it's absolutely amazing. I loved it. These two people with these different traumas and these different toxic traits were kind of like attracted to each other and bounced off of each other and kind of defined each other in a way. And that is how I feel about the ex that I was talking about, that like I lost to like drug addiction and different things, because I was ready to move on and improve my life, and like he wasn't, and you know, was actually getting worse. You know, that's obviously heartbreaking. And this was heartbreaking as well, because you can see that there clearly was love there, that they were two people just trying to do the best they could, but it didn't fit and it didn't work on either side. And so I really liked that, because I think there's this tendency to like, you know, throw our exes in the trash can, which I totally understand, you know, not wanting to move on and not think about that and such. But it's also an important part of our like development almost, I felt like I'm very excited to see Joe be in like a healthy relationship, because this is obviously like a defining era for him. Like, he went through a lot and learned a lot from that. I feel that when he is in the right relationship, or in the relationship that he should be, I'm really excited to read that work. And although, you know, breakups and relationships and stuff like that are really cliche, as he talks about in this book, I feel like it's not as talked about for gay men. And he literally says that at some point in here. And in fact, he's actually bi, which I feel like he's mentioned a couple times on the podcast. So that's awesome. We love more books by bi people, because I'm bi. We don't have enough bi literature, if you ask me. So that's kind of how I tie those two things together. Hopefully this made some kind of sense. I don't know if it only makes sense in my brain or what, but hopefully that made sense to you all. And honestly, all this reading and diction and stuff kind of reminded me of the Bukowski poem, where he talks about, it's like he repeats this phrase, and it's the hell of myself. And I just think about that so often, the hell of myself. Like, if that doesn't describe it. Like, I feel like different people have different challenges in life. And for some of us, our challenge ends up being ourself. It's to master ourself, to understand ourself. People have just been given different challenges. Like, I don't know. Some people, their challenges are, you know, out in the world, or they're more obvious, or they're more physical or more tangible. And for some of us, it is literally fighting with ourselves. So yeah, just a thought. And now that I've summarized the entire contents of both of these books, I'm going to go. Thank you so much for watching, and have a lovely day.